welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanna if you've never been here before, and today, I have a very exciting video series that I'm launching, which is going to be called Back to Basics. If you guys have been with my channel for a long time, then you know that I did a similar series this a couple years ago, and I decided to bring it back, relaunch it in all new videos, and teach you guys the basics of makeup. So for any of you that are out there and maybe you're scared about learning a specific part of your makeup routine like your eyebrows or eyeliner, this is the video series for you. It's not necessarily for anyone who's like a super expert makeup person because you probably know this stuff, but you guys might still like it to learn about a different way of using your makeup or a different technique or a brush that maybe you didn't know that you might really work well with in your makeup application. So yeah, that is going to be this new series. And for my first video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the base of my foundation and everything that goes into making my skin look the best that it can on a daily basis. So if you guys want to see that part and the first part of my Back to Basics series, then keep watching. So the first thing you always want to think about when you are starting your makeup is your base. And the most important part of your base, in my opinion, is hydration and skin prep. So there are two things that I think everyone needs to know about when they're starting their makeup, and that's moisturizers. You need two kinds. You need an eye cream and you need a face cream. So these are my two go-tos, especially when it comes to getting my makeup to look great on top of them, because not every moisturizer is the same when it comes to makeup application. So for my eye cream, I love the Kiehl's Avocado Creamy Eye Treatment. This is just the best eye cream in my opinion. It goes on really nice and rich. It has like this kind of like limey green color, and it just keeps the eye area very moisturized. So I apply just a little bit under each eye and I rub it in with my ring finger like so, keeping it in this crescent moon shape. And if I have any extra, I will bring it to the top lid. And a lot of people, I think, especially my age, will say, well, I don't need an eye cream, I'm only 18, I'm only 20 something. And maybe you don't want to invest in the most expensive eye cream, but I definitely believe that you should start using creams earlier in life, not only for prevention reasons, but also because the earlier that you start using eye cream, the earlier that a good habit forms, and the more likely that you are to actually use the moisturizer when you really need it, which is going to be in like 10 years. So for my face cream, I love the Caudalie Cream Sorbet Moisturizing Sorbet moisturizer. This is a go-to for makeup artists because it absorbs into your skin so quickly. I take about a dime size to like a large pea-sized amount, and I will run this all over my skin. Like this. And yes, I have a zit on my nose. It started as a really big whitehead, pulled it out with like a pore strip, and it turned into the worst zit of my nightmares. And now it is healing, and as it heals, I'm left with a giant scar, basically. The formings of a scar. Right now it's just like a sad little feature. So after I have applied my moisturizer, I recommend letting that absorb for about a minute. And during this time, you can kind of think about what other makeup you're going to use. You can pull some makeup. I'm just gonna skip over that so that way you guys don't have to sit here and wait and watch. The next step to a good base is going to be your primer. And you can get a primer in various formulas depending on what your skin concerns are. For me, I really love glowing ones, but I've also used smoothing primers, and I know there are really great mattifying primers out there. But for glow, I have really been loving the Becca primers. And this one is the Backlight priming filter in this cute champagne little tube. And this is just going to give you a little extra radiance. So again, I apply a very, very tiny amount of this. If the other one was a big pea, this is a small pea-sized amount. And again, just on the tips of my fingers. I try to keep this everywhere that I like to have just a little bit more glow, which is on my cheekbones, down the center of my nose, not on the sides of my nose, and then into my forehead and my chin. And where I want glow is where most people, I think, are going to want to apply their primers anyway. If you get really oily skin and you're using a mattifying primer, you're going to keep it in your T-zone as well. You're probably just going to apply it down the sides of your nose. And for a smoothing primer, again, the biggest area for your pores are probably your nose and this cheekbone area. So you just want to smooth that in. And everything with your face skin, you want to be super gentle, obviously, because the more that you pull on your skin, the more wrinkles you're going to have in 10 years. Next up is what is obviously the most important part of any foundation routine, which is going to be your foundation. And you can get a foundation in any kind of formula that you really like. My personal favorites are light to medium coverage and a liquid foundation. I love liquid foundations because I just think they look more beautiful sitting like and really melting into your skin, as opposed to powder foundations, which I find tend to look cakier on people and just harder to work with, especially in the early stages of applying makeup. Whereas a light coverage and a liquid coverage is going to be a little easier to work with, and as long as you're blending it out, it lays beautifully on your skin. And for people just getting into makeup, I think light coverage is honestly the best because you have no fear of creating a mask effect. Your natural beauty really shines through, and I just like the fact that you can always build from light coverage, whereas if you start with a really heavy coverage, you might feel less keen on whittling it down in the future. So my favorite foundation, and this has been my favorite foundation for about 1.5 years now, is the Becca Aqua Luminous Perfecting Foundation. This is my go-to for every day. I wouldn't use this for like events or anything like that, but for an everyday makeup, I do really like this. So it comes in this gorgeous glass bottle, and it has a little pump. So I will take just one pump and apply this. Again, focusing in the areas that I need the most coverage, which is, again, mainly your T-zone. So for beginners, there are two kinds of application methods that I really like to use for foundation. One is a beauty blender, and the other is a foundation brush. I am going to show you guys the foundation brush because I think it's the first thing that you should always use. Beauty blenders are great, but they tend to kind of water down your foundation a lot, and especially with a light coverage foundation, it might not be what you want. So this is the Real Techniques buffing brush. This is my favorite foundation brush, and I've used tons. I've used really expensive ones, really inexpensive ones, which this is probably the most inexpensive brush I've ever used, and I just really like how this applies. So what I do with this little buffing brush is just work in circular motions and blend this into the skin, like so. And what I love about light coverage foundation is that I really use it mainly to even out my skin tone, and I don't really need the coverage necessarily. I'm really comfortable with having acne show or kind of like acne scarring because I know I can also cover that up with concealer. But what I can't do with concealer is even out my skin tone, especially when I go outside. Now is the summertime, and when I go outside, I love to get color. I love to get a little bit of a tan, but I am super careful about tanning my face because the more sunlight that you get on your face, the more likely you are to wrinkle and get sunspots and skin cancer, obviously. So I always very generously apply sunscreen to my face, but I don't always apply it as generously or as high of an SPF on my body. And just naturally from being outside, my body gets tanner than my face because whatever reason, it just does. So as you guys can see, the color now matches my neck, and that's what my foundation really needs to do. So after I've used this to just kind of gently work it into my skin, the base is basically done. After applying your foundation, that's when I like to go into my concealer, because concealing should be a very specific application, and if you apply it before your foundation, it will move around too much and you won't have the high coverage where you really want it, especially when you're using a light coverage foundation. So I have two concealers that are my go-tos. One is the Becca Aqua Luminous Perfecting Concealer. This is more of a lightweight, very hydrating, watery concealer, and the other is the Urban Decay Naked Skin concealer, and this one is more of a high coverage, very good for like covering up dark spots or acne, and it stays all day. So these are my two favorite concealers, and I use them for different purposes. High coverage concealers are obviously what I'm going to use to cover up blemishes. So I have the mark on my nose, and then just a couple spots on my chin that I really want to cover up. When I'm covering up any kind of blemish or something where I have a lot of pigmentation in one specific area, I like to blend that out using a concealer brush, and I really like dome-shaped brushes. This is another Real Techniques one. You can get Real Techniques in the drugstore if you've never used their makeup brushes before, and you just blend that out by patting. And your concealer for any kind of like spots that you're trying to cover up should always match your foundation really perfectly. And you don't want it to move around a lot, which is why you just really want to kind of dot it into place. And that's why I love this like kind of dome-shaped brush, because it does the work for you and it doesn't absorb the product as much as, say, a beauty blender would. So as you guys can see from just the light coverage foundation and the concealer, I have done a pretty good job of hiding that really bad zit that I had that was healing, and the couple of little dark spots that I have on my chin. So now I have under eye circles, and I want to correct those too, and that's when I really like a concealer like the Becca concealer that is a little more hydrating, which is great for the under eye area or around the nose where I also get a little bit of darkness. And this concealer lays really great, and it also blends out really well. So this is a time that I recommend using a beauty blender for, because I already have my foundation on underneath and I want something that's really going to blend in this layer of concealer and make sure that it's blending out evenly and across the skin really well. And also, because the beauty blender has a little bit of water, it kind of helps it blend really seamlessly when I might have a couple different shades going on. Like this concealer is probably a shade too light for me right now, but it works really well in the center of my face because it adds a little more dimension, and I'm not worried about keeping the product all in one area. So now the last thing to do with your base that I really recommend is to bake your under eye. And that is going to be the last step in this part of my Back to Basics series. So I have two powders that I use for my under eye circles. The first one is the Kat Von D Lock-It Brightening Powder in this little gorgeous container. And I will just tap a little bit of the product onto the lid. This is when I use like a little brush like this. This is a little powder brush that I got from Sephora in some sort of kit. It's called the Pro Mini Flawless Airbrush. But this is when you can use like travel brushes that maybe you get for free from like a goodie bag or whatever. Take a little bit of that powder and just press it into this under eye circle. And I really recommend baking your under eyes just because that area on me always creases, and you want to do this right after you applied your concealer so that way it locks in where you applied that concealer and keeps it from creasing. So to keep your baking from looking too heavy, I do like to apply another powder on top of that. Generally, I will let the bake sit in while I do the rest of my makeup and then kind of puff it away with extra powder later, but because I'm trying to keep everything in this single Back to Basics video, I wanted to show you how to finish off your base now. So this is the Laura Mercier Secret Brightening Powder, and this is what I used to only use underneath my eyes, but I've recently been using it to kind of add a second step to my baking routine, I guess. So I will take a little bit of it on what's really a highlighting brush. This is a Sigma Tapered Highlighting F35 brush. And with just a little bit of the Secret Brightening powder on, I just gently swipe it across the eye area. And that just brushes away any of the heavy bake that I applied, while also adding just a little bit of brightness. And the Secret Brightening powder has just a little bit of like a shimmering effect, which really helps to brighten up the area, which is great for the under eye circles. Both of these powders are super finely milled, so they're really great for the under eye area. And I don't have any creasing underneath my eyes when I do that two-step process. So that is it for everything that goes into my base of my makeup routine. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below. And if you guys want to see the next videos that I'm putting out and the rest of my Back to Basics series, then make sure to subscribe down below. You can also hit the bell for my notifications if you like that. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!